What is this all about? I think we should take a look at what is happening in the 950 that Inphonik's doing, which is claiming to be one of the closest emulations to it. Here I have loaded the RX950. And again, I'm very thankful to Inphonik for having just given me the opportunity of adding this to my plugin arsenal, because there's no demo of it, and I'm really happy that I can show this to you. So the problem with the DAC in the 950 was not just about the 12-bit technology and things that are today a little bit limited, but kind of crunchy in a good way, because when you're pushing gain, you didn't have a lot of dynamic range. Yes, but there's a lot of jittery information. So whether you call it jitter or you call it jitter, I usually say jitter, things are jittering. It means that the clock source isn't 100% reliable, and because it isn't spacing the samples it's capturing or reproducing in a way that they are evenly spaced, you get distortion. That should not happen. Ideally, you want to take photographs of your sound that you're capturing or reproducing, whether it's digital to analog or analog to digital. During the transition, you want to have a clock that says, when it's time to take or reproduce a frame of a picture. You can think about it as a picture. And these pace, think of it as a metronome, should be always 100% perfect. The problem is clocks are not 100% perfect metronomes. And because they're kind of sometimes a little bit faster, a little bit slower, the frames are captured or reproduced at just ever so slightly different timings. And this creates distortion because you don't have the exact capture with the perfect 100% metronome in the example I've made. This is what you're seeing here. Now, I can tweak some stuff around, meaning it's so fast, I hope it translates to the recording of the video, but I can take the bandwidth and move it up, and you see that the synth, the actual machine, the converter of the 950 emulated, is now completely stable, right? Then I can take the filter, move it down here, and I have this kind of overly bright situation, which is very common in the AKAI world, and just a completely stable signal. Then I go here, take a look at the harmonic analysis, and what I have is just a bunch of noise below 100 dBs, and which kind of makes sense for the machine at the time or what we have today, and no harmonics, right? I can filter things down. You see I'm filtering even the noise that I'm generating, and this is pretty much it. The problem is I don't think a 950 is capable of going 1,200 hertz and be 100% stable like we're seeing here. I think this is pretty much theoretical. It's not happening on the real unit. So what's more likely to happen is this. So depending on where you have it, you see that things are moving in a way that simulate the problematic jitter and bandwidth resolution issues of the 950. I want you to take a look at this because it's not much about the harmonics a DAC generates. It's more about how unstable this was. So by closing the filter and then having it react to different amounts of jitter emulation, you get a ton of sound of it. On top of it, if you go here, you can pick the brilliance, which I personally find to be the most responding, probably the closest to what I remember 950 to be, to me, is 16. I have no idea if that's such to you, but to me it was 16. It just sounds better. We're just gonna hear it. It just has that AKAI thing, which I absolutely like, especially for beats and things that have to pass through. So then we have input and output. So let's keep it at maximum. Let's go here, see if we got harmonics. Well, you might say, oh, we got harmonics here. Well, no, we got harmonics, but we're clipping. Look what's happening, right? So I'm going to lower it down a little bit. Now, the moment I move the bandwidth, I see that there's a dynamic movement in the 950, which I believe to be a good thing. But look at what is happening the moment I'm dropping my bandwidth. So I can keep my filter completely open, doesn't really matter. You see those spikes that are moving around? That's the aliasing. That's just happening because of bandwidth issues in the unit itself. These are the issues that made things famous, all right? So if you go to dynamics and take a look at it, we see that it's not stable. You see that? It's just not registering anything below what, 62 dBs, and then it's kind of non-linear, and then it stabilizes itself. So for sounds that are very low, because you didn't have the dynamics, DAC was just not ready. Even the AD was even worse at doing that. You have this kind of unstable motion. Then it keeps being linear, so we can't really say it's a compressor. I don't think we're gonna see things becoming compressor-like, but this is essentially what the 950 does. So what I have here is a mono machine clone that I've redone in Redrum, and there's some clipping on it and just some effects. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna hear it going through the 950, because that's what it's all about. Like, now that we know how it looks like when it's playing, we want to know what does it sound like. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bypass it here below while things are playing, and then we're gonna engage it. And here, if it in default status, it just gives us that kind of mojo or vibe. So it becomes a little bit flatter, a little bit more, it's less bits, so it's a little bit more compressed and stuff. I kind of like where the filter and bandwidth are set, but I want you to hear the brilliance thing. To me, 16 is where it shines, and it just reminds me of the 950. So I'm just gonna have it play, and I'm gonna move the brilliance, okay? Okay, so now we do a before and after with the 16 brilliance, which to me sounds like default. Okay, so 2 bars without, 2 bars with. It just helps things come out somehow. I don't know. It's subtle as it should be. I remember having tried different emulations, but the 950 here by Inphonik is just completely invisible somehow, but even on a dark kind of vibe, it just reflects differently on the effects, and it just kind of speaks differently, right? I think this is a good example. I want to do that. So this simple sound of the Prophet 6, which sounds already into effects and things like that, how does it sound with the 950 on? How does it filter itself out? All right, so I'm just gonna play C sharp. Don't tell me you didn't hear it. How it kind of gave it that edge, right? And I think 16 is what kind of a 950 thing. I have to think I have a sampler there and not the Prophet 6, but you might say, why are you trying to make something that sounds better worse, right? Through something that is inferior in technology and vibe. It's an analog synthesizer versus the AKAI thing. Well, I kind of want to give it a vibe that this is coming from a 90s sampler talking about the old Prophet, and it's a sound, it's a different thing. So let's play with the bandwidth and filter. I think they got the filter 100% right. Have you heard how kind of flat and narrow it becomes? It's just insane. So now let's keep the filter there. Let's play with the bandwidth. All right, let me do something like pushing a little bit of gain and then output down, filter here. For those of you who've played with the 950 in an era where the analog synths, maybe you couldn't get the analog synths. You know, I was already too young when the 950 was there to buy one. You know, I didn't have a chance to just ask my parents or something like it. But I remember that sound, and I think the 950 here by Inphonik, it just got it so right. It sounds like I have a module, and it's something from some kind of sound vintage collection of something, right? It's vintage synth collection. The Nord lead is renowned for not having converters that are much better than a 950, a lot of people say. But how about this? Don't tell me you don't hear it. So without, with. It sounds compressed. It sounds like, because you got less definition, less whatever. It sounds cool. So maybe I'm pushing things off to clip. I have no idea, but they would do it on a 950, so it's good. Let's try and get the filter to work. It's a sound design thing. Without, sounds good. I really like this. These guys, let me take, I haven't tried that pad, so let me try and run this. I've enjoyed this way more than my ego of the 12-bit generation should have done it. I hope, again, that this gave you an idea of why and how inferior technology back then is still legendary, and it sounds good, and it sounds with ton of attitude that you can't really instantly get in the latest and greatest distortion plugin. It's just a very specific thing that I think we all have in our heads, especially if we lived through the 90s, which were what they were, but they certainly had a lot of cool music. I believe that. I don't know if you believe that. So thank you very much as usual. We'll see each other soon. Ciao.